Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Watchmen, Season 1, Episode 8, A God Walks into a Bar. The title is a play on words, a blue god clearly walking into a bar to start this entire mess, but a blue god meeting a bar, like Angela A-Bar. This episode was everything that I stated I was curious about in my last video, how these two met, and even more than I asked for, because it was done from the perspective of Dr. Manhattan and how he experiences time. The entire episode was trying to help the audience understand this incredibly mind-boggling concept, not only through explaining it to someone who doesn't know anything about it with the dialogue to Angela, but showing us the fragmented actions through his lens of time. Like his entire life, this entire episode, it takes place while he meets Angela for the very first time, seeing the rest of his life play out. It's brilliant, and I commend the writers who had to work on this. It's a daunting task that I don't envy in the slightest, but they did an incredible job of making this work. The episode showcases their meeting and inevitable life together, and in light of us living in linear time, I will do my best not to jump around too much. It begins with us on VVN Day, with Dr. Manhattan hiding his face and walking into Eddie's bar to find his love, Angela, upset and unwanting of his company. She eventually allows him to sit and accepts the beer, but the reason that she's upset is because her parents died many years ago on this very day because of Dr. Manhattan's actions. Dr. Manhattan's face is hidden this entire episode, this because he clearly was a different face before he converts to Cal's body, explaining why Lori didn't know that it was him. Also, everyone upset that it wasn't a white guy playing this role before the conversion. I'll do my best to explain it as Angela would with, who fucking cares? I laughed out loud when Angela asked if this was a Zeus thing, meaning that he was coming down here just to spread his seed to the world, masked as somebody that wasn't a Greek god, or something that wasn't a Greek god. Dr. Manhattan states that a computer program is carrying out pre-recorded events of him on Mars. The reason isn't exactly clear, and it's kind of skipped over, nor if it's him even doing this. The context appears to link this to him, like he's deployed this so that he can create life privately on Europa without anybody questioning it. However, it's odd that he would care about that. I don't think that he would care if people knew. Like, the choice with Angela, it's already happened, so why is privacy of this already shrouded oasis, because of the atmosphere, his concern at all? Also, why would he use a recording for people to watch? He could literally just have another version of himself on Mars at all times, doing these actions. I don't know. Something just seems a little off, and this detail bothers the hell out of me. They're hiding something. I can feel it, but I don't know what. I guess the overall question is, who's managing that recording that broadcasts to the world, and why? What are their goals? And I believe that the answer is true. I mean, she manages the phone booth system for people to quote-unquote talk to Dr. Manhattan. It's not too far out of the norm for her to manipulate people in this regard as well. Likely they're doing it to keep the peace alive. Blue God on camera means that he's always around. Blue God not on camera means that you can question if he exists at all. Next, we get this amazing quote about how he experiences time and how for her it's particularly infuriating, which I immediately used on my wife when she asked why I didn't do the dishes, and weirdly, she wasn't as pleased with myself as I was. The animated scene with the creation of Europa was beautiful. We learned firstly that it's real. You know, there was some question about if it was, and now it's confirmed. Second, it was created by him, and it took only 90 seconds. Then lastly, the pool here creates all of the creatures. It's described as a hatchery stocked with miracles, finned, winged, and hoofed. Then he creates two humans and the manor house from his childhood, the place where two kind souls opened their home and took in people fleeing Nazi rule and protected them until they made it to the new world. The same couple that he sees making love later on, providing an apple to the scene just like the Garden of Eden. The same couple that doesn't shame him for being in there, but talks to him as a human who should one day understand the beauty of their actions instead of the shame. The people who first told him about creating life are now the Adam and Eve of his new world, the ultimate lovers. And it's quite profound. I really like this. We learned that Dr. Manhattan deeply regrets his actions in Vietnam, but because of his powers, he's always known of this regret, but made the decision anyway. Ends justifying means kind of thing. You really have to wonder what he means when he says that he tried to do the right thing. If we're led to believe that this all turns out to be a tragic ending for his character and he regrets the one major thing that he's done, what was the purpose? I mean, yes, he allowed millions of people to die from the squid dropping. He created life on Europa. Surely that will evolve into its own thing. His influence on the world has led to many technical achievements, but will those things be enough for this story? What was the point? I mean, the journey? I don't think his story is over, is my point. Not without us seeing one last thing that makes us understand why he would do these things that he'd regret if it didn't pay off. The ends need to justify the means because he has potentially seen those ends and knows. Otherwise, the end in this theoretical equation would have been the squid dropping, admitting that Viedt was correct. Without it, a nuclear war would have started. I guess it all led to him finding love as well. Like, it was all worth it because he got to be with the woman that he loved. But I don't know, equally, if we're taking that route, if all of that didn't happen, the children never would have been with them. And if everything has to mean something, this could all be for them. Perhaps the next generation of Manhattan needed to be formed, and this makes it all worth it. I'm definitely going off on a tangent here, but the reason that this idea is possible at all is because later they discuss transferring his powers. Eggs have been a part of this series since the beginning. The first time we meet Angela and Topher, she's cracking eggs in the class. The egg farm, so on and so forth, but the purpose is eggs are often used to symbolize life or rebirth, and we see him making food that is somehow more important than his inevitable death. I believe that he's doing what needs to be done to transfer his powers. A counter argument that I would put on that is that we see him saving Angela after he leaves the house and using his powers. He clearly has them while he's being teleported, so there's that. But still, I think that he transfers his powers to the kids, of which Topher makes the most sense in my opinion. He's gotten the most screen time, and his acting has been off this entire time. Like, the director has forced him to act in some weird way that will make sense later on. Like, he's constantly studying the world, even. I mean, we even see him playing with floating connects that are, Dr. Manhattan toys, like he's a baby Dr. Manhattan. I also consider Angela being a viable candidate here, but more on that later. We come to the scene where she selects the ripped black guy with a fat-ass dick to be her husband, so, she knows what she wants in a man. He hides his mark, and we return to the bar scene with the jukebox playing Angela's favorite song, Tunnel of Love, before she knows that it's her favorite song. This is referring to the importance later on, him describing the experience of suppressing his powers and coming out the other side of this dark blimp into his life. It's the tunnel of love. He goes into darkness with Angela because he loves her and comes out 10 years later. They get in a fight 6 months later, and Dr. Manhattan tells her that it's just before he created the egg in their original meeting. Another railroad tie supporting this theory of him passing his powers on. Eggs are important, and keep note of them. This fight is similar to the fight that we've seen before when Lori and him are having sex and he's working on other things. I laughed pretty hard during the scene, watching it with the missus, because it was real. Like, sometimes you just know when you're about to fight, and I've probably said it half a dozen times, like, are you sure we can fight? Like, I don't have anything better to do. I'm down, let's fight. In this case, it's a little different because he knows the inevitable future and as such can do and say everything that will lead to that fight happening. It's also interesting because this becomes the third time that we see his emotions explicitly stated. Right now, he discusses fear, and since he experiences all of these at the same time, he feels that fear of being killed and rebuilding himself in the exact moment he feels the love from knowing Angela and the regret he has from killing Viet Cong for the US government. It's hard to grasp, but imagine having to constantly be afraid of the most fearful thing in your life, be the most loved you've ever been, and regret your biggest regrets all at the same time. I don't know if it's possible for humans to understand that, but I imagine it's kind of like being a Game of Thrones fan during the final seasons of Game of Thrones. Angela breaks up with Mr. Blue, and he goes to Adrian Veidt's Antarctic lair, filled with his obsessions, cracked and all over the floor, and a wall of screens showing the world still on track to destroying itself, creating bombs in a time of peace because it makes them feel safe. It's been 24 years since the last time they met. That last meeting, Veidt tried to destroy him using the technology that created him. It failed, of course, because Dr. Manhattan said the first thing that he learned to do as this new entity was to put himself back together. So we have to wonder what will be different now. I think this is another shred of proof toward the theory that he can't be killed, that he must transfer his powers when it is time for him to do so. His physical body, sure, but the rest of him still remains unknown. During the scene, we also confirm Viedt was the one who designed the Squidfall to keep the idea of fear equaling peace alive. This also confirms by proxy that in the current time, Trieu remains the one doing this because she buys everything that Viedt has while he's away. We also learned that Viedt and Trieu were working together on something because she told him that John was on Europa, meaning daughter theory is still very much on the table. Also, John admits here that he wants to be mortal again. Thus, the plan for the head ring was created. I'm interested to know if this is all that he meant, though. Potentially that Viedt's plan and the 7K plan being one and the same, removing his powers from him to become mortal. Or it could be the ring itself. 10 years of darkness that he couldn't foresee was his humanity again. And once he comes back, he dies, meaning that he lived, did what he thought was best, and finally died. And nothing is more human than that. Like he said to the kids,
before Uncle Joe was born, he was nowhere. Didn't exist. Then he was a baby. Then he was a child. Then he was an adult. Then he died. Now he's nowhere. Again.
We also learned during the White Night, Angela was saved by Cal, explaining why his absence was never explained. We also learned that Dr. Manhattan left Europa because their love was infinite. They sought to constantly please him instead of just being their own people. As we discussed in a previous video, his marooning here was self-inflicted but orchestrated by Dr. Manhattan. He became their master. They adore and love him because that is all that matters to these people, which explains the post-credit scene later. Pause the video right now if you haven't watched that. It's a few minutes long, so don't miss this. But what we see is Viedt being shamed by his servants, begging him to stay. They are upset because once again the person they praise is leaving them. The game warden here was the original Mr. Phillips. He watched his god leave him, abandon all of them, and now wants more than anything to keep him here. I mean, he became the game warden to ensure that this land wasn't forsaken again. Viedt wants to leave because he has no purpose here. He still views humanity as lesser, needing him to save them. And just as he blows the candles out, he notices the horseshoe. Remember, Viedt knew explicitly when he needed this.
I don't need it yet.
So the fact that he finds it and starts digging in this exact location proves that he's seen this and knows how to escape. I think without a doubt the UFO that crash lands on the farm is Viedt, but more importantly, we have to figure out how he knows this. Is it possible that he knew everything? I mean, think back to his mastermind puppeteer plan that he had all of those years ago. He's thinking pretty far ahead, but is this insignificant horseshoe a part of that? And that's why it becomes the biggest mystery. How did he know that he would need this? The only person that seems to have a similar foresight is Trieu. I wouldn't doubt, because of the time-based undertones and everything that she does, if they didn't create a device to perform this action. Also, perhaps explaining how she was able to gather such a fortune in such a short amount of time on Earth. In a sense, Dr. Manhattan's link to all of time means that it's technically possible for future/past you to communicate. What if Dr. Manhattan had something to do with this, and we haven't seen it yet? Maybe at some point linking past and future Viedt together, or even showing Viedt himself. They have to explain how he knew that he would need this in the future, and there's too many time-based mechanics at play here, so let's get back to the main story. Angela accepts the plan and picks to move back to Tulsa, where her family comes from. He creates the egg in front of Angela and tells her that he can pass his powers on, but that he would never pass his abilities on to someone without their consent, which is a huge theory buster for Topher becoming the next blue god. I mean, can he actually consent to becoming this entity when he doesn't fully understand it? I think it's possible that perhaps Angela would take his powers on because she has already learned so much about them. She can now better help people who can't comprehend them because she has spent so much time as that person. Also, the line later on about her needing to see him walk on water. We've seen a few things now that align to Angela consuming this food and becoming the next blue god. She even learns of his perception of time by causing the death of Judd Crawford. She has some experience with this, maybe more than anyone else in the world, and I think that that is a huge statement for who these powers are going to go to. Somebody that can consent to taking them. She inserts the ring, they enter the tunnel of love, and finally they exit 10 years later. When he wakes, he's pretty out of it for a little bit, and even admits that the device has left him confused. He teleports to the pool, scares the kids, and then teleports the kids somewhere safe. They are at the movie theater with their grandfather where this entire story started, and probably watching Bass Reeves catch the bad sheriff once again. Then we get the line about her needing to see him at the pool. I view this as both she needs to see this because if her son starts doing it, she won't freak out, and if she starts doing it, she will understand the emotional human side of experiencing a blue god firsthand, something that even the original Dr. Manhattan couldn't comprehend. He says that it's important later on, and since we don't see that relevance before he gets sucked up, we know that he doesn't die instantly. And Angela will need some water walking based knowledge for some unknown reason. In this same scene, Dr. Manhattan talks to Will Reeves, who lives in Captain Metropolis's old house given to him after he died. So I guess things ended well, Black Unrest being a solo mission and all. He discovers that he has a granddaughter, and Manhattan tells him that their lives have become entangled and wishes to form an alliance to make sure an optimal outcome can be obtained. Now, Manhattan trusts him for whatever reason, so I guess that I trust him as well, but that blind trust also makes me extremely untrusting, and frankly, I don't fucking know who to trust anymore. Wade. I trust Wade and Lube Man. That's it. Anyway, I think that what we didn't see in this moment is Dr. Manhattan revealing the plan to Will. The shocking moment of how Judd Crawford got mixed into all of this was a pretty intense moment, and I love this interaction overall. I don't think it was anything like maybe a little paradoxical or, couldn't happen or something, but as long as they're not breaking their own rules that they're establishing in this sci-fi universe, I'm not getting too upset here. As it ends, Angela is hurt and maybe confused more than anything, but Dr. Manhattan only offers a paradox, the chicken and the egg, and teleports to the kitchen because he's hungry. Now, here's the kicker. Dr. Manhattan doesn't get hungry. So when we see him making waffles, which famously were fed to his children, notice that he tells Angela to watch the eggs with a concern in his voice as to note their importance versus everything else that he was discussing, of which doesn't matter because Angela throws them on the ground. The time between her leaving and him showing up is plenty for him to finish these waffles, which oddly enough, he could just manifest with his mind, but he takes the time to do this as if making them with love, one final time for the people he loves like he did for all of those years. He reveals the moment that he fell in love, and Angela goes to fight an army for him, refusing to believe that it's over. The moment she stepped out, I knew that this is how Dr. Manhattan would die, or be captured, with him sacrificing himself to save her. The man that was actually able to activate the teleporter wasn't killed by Manhattan when he came out, because Angela had shot him, so he wasn't mind exploded by Dr. Manhattan. So in a way, she also caused that too. The one thing I fault this episode for was not making this scene a little faster paced, so that my first thought wasn't, well, he obviously could have saved her, but again, that's the point. It's fated. If he didn't do everything that he would have genuinely done, he wouldn't have gotten zapped. As upsetting as it is to Angela, I believe that he's still acting for the greater good of humanity and knows that this will all make sense later. So in summary, Dr. Manhattan lives past this point, has probably transferred his powers to somebody else, knowing that he must die for the people he loves to live. Maybe Angela, so that she can choose to stop Senator Keene from obtaining the powers for himself with the Russian intrinsic field generator. Viedt and Trieu still have a yet-to-be-revealed foresight and are likely working together, making the idea that this is all their master plan still on the table. Lastly, if it does go to Angela, it also means the showrunners were telling us how this series ends from the very beginning with the promo material all along, and that is pretty freaking awesome. But with that, we come to the end of the video. Sorry once again if anything sounds a little off. I am still very much under the weather. But if you liked it, please be sure to subscribe for more. Special thank you to my Patreon supporters. We're now up to 17 people, which is awesome. My top 3, Chris Cole, Robert Holtz, and Micheal Linck, are my top donors once again, and I love you guys. If I left anything out or you want to add your own theories, please be sure to comment them down below. Much love, everybody, and I can't wait to talk to you all again soon.